Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Coaching Uncovered podcast. My name is Chris Berry, and I am going to be your host for today. Joining us, we have Chris McNeil. Chris, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Chris. Great to be here.
It is great to be here with another person with a great name.
Yes, it
so,
is.
but before we dive into the specifics of your business, what you do, and some of the details, could you just give everyone that's either listening or watching an understanding of what you coach and help people with?
I coach leaders, entrepreneurs, marketers, and communicators in strategic thought leadership, which is leading an audience or market segment to embrace a particular point of view that's empowering to them and that also cast your business in the most favorable light as well.
For sure. Okay. And what made you get into this area specifically?
Well, I had a marketing agency, and this was after I sold my personal fitness training studios. So my coaching background goes way back. And in those studios, we used a lot of sports psychology and NLP, neurolinguistic programming, because I always felt it was more of a mind game than anything else. It's about motivation, changing behaviors. And we made good use of that. Sold it to friendly competition to get some time in my life back because the chain had started sprawling and taking more time than I wanted to spend on it, and had a great opportunity to start doing software, which I won some innovation awards for in the business, that evolved to marketing software and an agency utilizing that. But what I found was that only certain customers really got the full benefit and had breakthrough growth. Like, we had a company that grew from about 20-30% to over 50% market share. It doubled over a couple of years. Other companies that grew over 100% a year regularly. And I started using modeling methods to look at the distinction. What's the difference? And the difference was, number one, the leader of the business saw their role as leading marketplace thinking, teaching the marketplace how to perceive their category. Here's how to use X. Here's how to look at having a pool installed. Here's the way you should approach it. The second part was they saw the relationship with me more of a coach and consultant, because as an agency, you can easily get pegged down the hierarchy, and information doesn't travel up and down hierarchies very well. And the leverage point was usually the thinking of the leader. And if you get them on board with taking their thinking, honing it, packaging it, amplifying it in a way that empowers people and guides them to a better result, getting more value, to making smarter decisions, you can dominate a marketplace with that. So I migrated to, and I still have the digital agency resources at hand for the coaching and consulting clients who need it. And not all do. Some have the resources internally. So I migrated fully to the coaching and consulting model because that's where the leverage is at. It's working directly with the leadership of an organization or a solopreneur to empower them to get the most out of their voice.
So you kind of went through this entire process, obviously, marketing agency, or you previously had the PT marketing agency, understanding it. A lot of it is that mindset, right? That kind of frame, as I've kind of you just exactly explained.
Yes.
As you've been going through and helping transform, I mean, obviously, we have some massive results, like you said, going from like 20 to 30 to 50, 100% growth. What would you say are the biggest kind of frames and shifts? Obviously, I'm sure that there's so many different aspects to it, but what would you say are the biggest things that just completely changed these biz that allowed them to have such substantial growth?
Well, a big part of it is shifting your frame of reference to look at your organization through the eyes of the customer and the prospect in your audience.
Mm-hmm.
And marketing guru named Jay Abraham, who was one of my early influences, said it best. Most business people fall in love with their business or their product or their service, where they really should be falling in love with the prospect and their customer.
Mm-hmm.
And Peter Drucker said it too, the father of modern management, said our marketing is not a department. It's how your business looks from the outside. So it's really integrated in every place it touches the customer.
Mm-hmm.
So those are a couple of the mindset shifts, looking at it from the outside in, designing from the customer point of view, and also realizing your marketing is part of the whole system of your business.
Yeah.
And no matter what we do, and whether we're a solopreneur or we have a large manufacturing organization or a sprawling service business in multiple cities, we're also in the marketing business.
Yeah.
We're also a marketing company. And when you think that way and you think of marketing not as just interrupting people's attention to sell them, but helping empower people who are probably already researching online to learn about your category, giving them the best, most empowering answers and creating real models. And that's why I help people, especially artificial intelligence now, Chris, because it's changing the game on internet marketing. It's replacing a lot of search engine optimization tactics, because it used to be you could just rank at the top of Google. Now the AI searches are superseding some of that. But see, when you do strategic thought leadership, you're packaging your thinking into coherent models that when AI picks it up, if you have built the authority around that model and organized it coherently enough, it'll be repeated by AI and lead people to you. So your marketing these days needs to be AI resilient. Use it and also make it so that when other people use it, it points to you. And strategic thought leadership, I believe, does that extremely effectively.
Yeah, for sure. So you've gone through this. Obviously, you've been teaching this in different references. Obviously, you've been teaching this specifically for a while, but even just understanding the mindset piece behind it, even back when you had the studio and everything.
Yes.
What would you say have been some of the highlights, the favorite parts, and then some of the biggest challenges of having your business and kind of going through and coaching people on this?
Well, I'll give you a couple of the highlights. There is a company called Digital Echo, and they give permission to talk about them. And the founder was having troubles with their sales system. And digital accessibility is about making companies' web presences, websites, and media accessible to people with disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and he was running into problems selling it. And the best customers were hospitals. And he'd meet with the IT department, and they perceive it as competitive. Oh, we do this, get a lot of resistance. So we did some market listening research, which is part of what we do, find out not just customer sentiment about the category, but people's unmet values and beliefs around that and the decision makers, and did some brainstorming together. And we came up with a thought leadership position that it's not about a technical solution. This is about being inclusive. If you're preaching diversity and inclusion for your organization, how can you exclude people with handicaps? And your web properties are probably even more important than your physical properties for that, because more people are going to go on your website than walk in your building. He said this simple repositioning and creating media and messaging around that, and rewriting all this marketing material and sales process transformed their sales process. He said now they're meeting with receptive HR people who are welcoming their message, having values-based conversations, bringing on customers with little friction, where he was meeting resistance with IT departments before, just from that reframe.
Yeah.
Not about this, it's about this instead.
Hmm.
Another example would be a company that does youth sports fundraising. They help kids' sports teams raise money with an app. There's lots of app companies out there doing that. Lots of big players. This is a small startup. Well, how are we going to cut through the clutter with that? With all these big players and multi-million-dollar budgets. Well, we did some market listening and found conversations where the coaches and parents, the people who made the decisions on that, were talking about these new app companies. And they were saying things like, well, what's that teaching the kids? We used to have to work to raise money. I had to walk uphill to and from school when I was a kid. Bad joke, but hey, old joke. And I went to the founder and said, look, David, all your competitors are preaching convenience. Your app is just as convenient. That's not a differentiating factor. But they're all making it about convenience. But what people are complaining about is that it's not about the growth for the kids. There is an unmet value, which is a huge opportunity hole in a segment to fill with a thought leadership position. And you should partner with charities to make it about the growth. Now, that brought other benefits too, because then you had the charity co-promoting leveraging their PR departments, thanking them on using their social media, thanking them on their email list, raising the profile of the campaign. And it
Yeah.
gave kids a higher mission with something to talk about except raising money for the team. Hey, we're also representing this cause, and we're sharing 5% of what we raise, and we're doing volunteer work as part of that. It elevated the whole thing.
Mm.
This repositioning, this thought leadership position, got him a deal with a national sporting goods chain as the exclusive provider, got him on the front page of major media, major newspapers in the sports section. They said
Wow.
gets emails from parents and coaches saying things like, wow, I've been looking to get the kids involved in the community, never thought about using their sports fundraising. We're only going to use you going from here on out.
Hmm.
So as an example of what a thought leadership model and a clear thought leadership positioning can do for business, it can reposition all the rest of the competition to be somewhere else, and you're there unique alone with this value proposition.
Yeah. Interesting. Just by
That's
the reframe, as you said, the positioning and the thought of how you're framing it, essentially.
Yeah, and it's really about working on the level of mental models or belief systems. And a lot of it, and where the coaching really fits in too, is I deal with a lot of solopreneurs who are looking like consultants, leadership coaches, and recruiting companies. And they're all looking to use inbound marketing and content marketing, and they realize you have to do it with thought leadership. And a typical thing they say is like, I know I need to do this type of content, but I don't want to sound like everybody else in my field.
Yep.
So the coaching piece comes in helping people tap into their creativity, which everybody's creative, whether they believe it or not. And I know how it is with how bad belief systems get imprinted. I had a second grade music teacher with a wooden leg who told me I wasn't musical. But I became a pretty decent musician later in life in spite of that, because I rejected that belief when I became conscious of it.
Yeah.
But when you believe you can be creative and you start learning methods for opening the door to creativity showing up, and that's the coaching function, helping people get with that, and helping people gain more insight and increase their confidence in speaking to the public as a leader. Because as somebody starts to build up their thought leadership platform and their media and their model that the media is based on, they become a go-to for like podcast guesting, like we're doing now. It's one of the major ways to promote, especially in the age of AI, where so much AI generated content. Algorithms like Google are really favoring human content like podcast transcripts now, because we know that it's human generated.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps them tap into the beautiful benefit I know you know well from what you're doing is other people's audiences.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Agreed.
Yes.
It's powerful how sometimes, as you said, don't get me wrong, there's so much nuance and detail behind it. But as you mentioned, those shifts can get just completely alienate isn't necessarily the best word, but just set you apart, differentiate yourself from all the competition, as you mentioned, and obviously the results that come from it.
Absolutely. And, there are some who would say, well, that's just like a unique selling proposition, but not really. A unique selling proposition is like saying our products do this and that. This is centered around audience thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is around the thinking that, like with the youth sports fundraising, leading people to see an app as an avenue to growth for the kids is leading them to new thinking, or leading hospitals to see web accessibility as part of their inclusion.
Yeah.
Being diverse is leading thinking, but it's doing it in a way to empower people. So it's not manipulative. It's just giving them more choices, which also separates it from personal branding. So I said, well, this is personal branding. So personal branding is important, absolutely, but that's ego-based. And if you do too much of that, you can look egotistical. This is service-based. You're building a thought leadership model that can also exist without you and flourish in the wild. It's all about helping people. So it's a nice way to really flesh out personal branding as well as to build your thought leadership position.
Yeah, for sure. Well, the thought leadership position can obviously transform so many different aspects of the business. On that last part that you mentioned in regards to branding, which is obviously the subset of kind of marketing, of kind of making all that sort of stuff and everything. As you've been growing your coaching business and doing all that, how, because this is where most coaches kind of fall short. They're not really sure what to do. typically just rely word of mouth and everything, especially with your marketing agency, marketing background. What are the ways that you're currently generating leads for your coaching business?
Well, I try to practice what I preach
Mhm.
and do it through strategic thought leadership, which
Mhm.
means every touch seems to have a lot more impact. Why work really hard when well, why try work all day sawing a tree down with a rusty saw, as Stephen Covey would say, when you can stop and sharpen a saw and knock it out in 5 minutes? This is
Yeah.
sharpening the saw to make every communication more effective. And
Yeah.
that said, the channels that have worked really well are speaking on podcasts like here and public speaking. I did a presentation to a group of 15 entrepreneurs, and 5 of them raised their hands and said, "We want to hire you." I'm hearing it. It wasn't even a sales pitch. It
Yeah.
was just introducing the concept to empower.
Mhm.
They're like, this is what we need to be doing.
Yeah.
And also inbound through Thought Leadership Studio podcast, which you should be a guest on sometime if you're interested. Love to have you.
Yeah. That'd be awesome.
And ebooks like The Marketer's Guide to Strategic Thought Leadership, which builds an email list that we communicate with, and all the social media channels very present on X, LinkedIn, and Flipboard in particular. And all of those end up creating kind of a pipeline where I end up getting clients all over the world from it, actually. Now that
Yeah.
it's gotten mature, and I caution anyone listening, say, well, inbound marketing is the way to go. Don't replace your outbound with it if you're doing outbound until it gets mature, because your leads will be much lower cost, but it takes time to reach maturity and make sure you get
Mhm.
every point of the funnel, so to speak, addressed with the right media pieces and touch points.
Yeah. Understood. So you talked about inbound marketing. It's obviously so powerful when you have these things, because not only are they obviously they're coming, but they know, like, and trust you. They have all these different things on that, which then just dramatically makes them much more warmer, much more wanting to work with you. For people that are, let's say, don't have any sort of these assets that you just kind of described, right? All of this different stuff. They're wanting to build it all out and everything. And let's say they're brand new and they're maybe just getting started. What are some pieces that you'd recommend for them to do in regards to allocation of their time of inbound versus outbound? Because obviously we only have so much time and attention. Like, how much time and attention would you recommend they put on building these kind of longer term inbound assets, right? That they can use to go ahead and get people coming in versus some of the outbound. What would you kind of recommend the time allocation? Then specifically for the outbound, what should they do? Would you recommend?
That's a great question, and one that I find has a bit of a different answer for every single person. But some good questions to ask yourself to start with: do you have clients already? And where do they come from? And reverse engineer that and start with your operating working client acquisition strategies that may not even be conscious. Like a bank did this and found that they're spending all this money on advertising, but it was the meetings that their managers were having with financial advisors that were bringing all the people. And so they put more resources into that. So study what's working and amplify that to start with. And second, you know, divide your time between the urgent and the important. If you need to build clients quickly, that will be some outbound. I had the luxury of not having to do it quickly because I had other businesses before this one that were doing well enough. But others may need to do some outbound, which you can do pretty effectively through LinkedIn if you know how to use Sales Navigator, but start conversationally and just have a goal for X number of conversations a week where you're not looking to sell the initial conversation, because that doesn't go over that well like LinkedIn direct messaging, but you're looking to make relationships with people who might be clients, but you're not pitching it to start with. You're just looking to get to know them with an intense curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
If you're intensely curious about others who usually reciprocate and get
Yeah.
curious about you, then you might find some that have needs matching. So X number of hours a week, like LinkedIn, consider LinkedIn Navigator to better target your ideal client profile when you understand that. If you don't, you should spend some time on that. Who's your ideal person, both in terms of demographics and psychographics. It's like I work really well with people who want to lead.
Yeah.
Don't just want to be successful in business, but they have a higher mission and they want to lead people to more value through what they do and help
Mhm.
others and lead a category, be the category leader. And that's my niche. Um, so I know that's the psychographics of what I look for. And then
Mhm.
demographics would be like C-suite, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, people making 6 figures, doing pretty well, but want to make 7, want to add a 0, want full time, and get there in 1 year instead of 5 years. I know your coach is listening to this. You probably have similar value propositions like that. Let's help you full time and have people do the math. How much would you anticipate making in 5 years if everything went well? What's the difference? And then what's the difference between what you're making now? If you made that in 1 year instead of 5, let's total up the number. It puts your fee in context. If you can show somebody that, it's $100,000 plus win over months of working with you, then you can charge high fees, and it's in context because you're in a leverage position. And on the inbound, everybody's different, but certainly setting aside, it depends on what stage you're at. Do you already have unique material? Do you have your own thought leadership positioning set up? Because you want to get your concept really clear, because once you do, and you have clear talking points that support your concept, this kind of thing to help clients with, then your content marketing gets a lot easier and more coherent because you have talking points to draw from that have a common theme that is designed to be really empowering to your target audience. So it's naturally magnetic that way. And then, maybe 2 hours a day should be plenty, but I would caution people not to rush into it until you've conceptually built it out. Because once you've conceptually built it out into a clear model, and some of these things I describe in more detail for those interested in the Marketer's Guide to Strategic Thought Leadership, which they can get at thought.io, THAUT.io, as a guide that kind of shows you the building blocks behind strategic thought leadership, things to have in place to have that kind of coherent model that will make everything else go much better for you from there on out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did that answer it well enough, Chris?
It absolutely did, because that's I think where so many coaches get stumbled. They're not sure, like, what do I do? Because there's a million people telling them, oh, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this.
Oh, right,
But
absolutely.
I think that the way, and I'm not saying the fact of you, I'm saying all the other noise and everything is so noisy. But the way you put it succinctly. Obviously, you gave great detail about all these different things, but you're able to bring it back succinctly of just having conversations. That's what it comes down to, and getting to know them, having that curiosity. Because so many coaches just think, oh, I need to go send, hey, I have this program, you want to buy it? That's not going to serve them in regards to doing it. Yeah, you might get a couple of people, but the odds, if you're talking percentage, is going to be such a smaller percentage if you're using that way in comparison if we're just seeking to provide value, have conversations, which is what you talked about through LinkedIn. And then obviously the longer term of having this inbound sort of like content marketing sort of strategy that gets people to nurture and everything. But we just understand sometimes it can just blow up in the beginning, but typically that's not how it works, right? It's a much more process and everything. So
It's much more money and time efficient, but it is a long-term game strategy. So
for sure.
it's nice to have the balance of the outbound for those who don't have the time, patience, or resources to wait for that to kick in from inbound.
Yep, exactly. So, okay. Well, this has been awesome. I'm sure we could probably keep talking for hours and hours and hours about all of these different things and strategy and everything. One last question I do have for you, and then I would love for you just to, I know you already mentioned a little bit about the guide. I'd love for you just to go ahead and explain a little bit more about it again.
Sure.
And then also way people can get in communication with you. I know we only have a couple minutes, so I'll just keep this one really quick then. If you just had one quick snippet of back to the old Chris, right when he first got started in this space, what one piece of advice would you give your old version of you?
Stay hungry, stay motivated, because having a really high level of motivation and sustaining that, people pick up on it. Especially when your motivation is high-minded and you're motivated to serve and help others at the highest level.
Absolutely. I agree.
That would be the advice.
I like it. For anybody that is interested in connecting with you, they really resonate with your message, they want to work with you, and maybe even connect with the guide, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, I've got an upcoming book called Strategic Thought Leadership, and the landing page for it is strategicthoughtleadership.com. So you can get a free preview there. I also have the ebook I mentioned, Marketer's Guide to Strategic Thought Leadership. And that is at thought.io. It's spelled funny, THAUT.io. And you'll see the links to get the free Marketer's Guide. that would be a good place to just use it as kind of a self-assessment. Which of these building blocks do I have in place? Some, none, couple, and really start to fill out your model that will then make everything else go much more effectively from that point on.
For sure. Absolutely. Well, Chris, thank you again for being on the podcast. It was great having you here.
My pleasure, Chris.
I look forward to future conversations. And yeah, that's everything.
Likewise.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Have a
Awesome.
great one.
Okay. Thank you very much.
If you guys like this video, make sure to go ahead and like and subscribe. And if you'd also like to watch another episode to see how you can continue to grow your coaching business, go ahead and click right here.